Welcome to Smalltalk Daily for Thursday, May 13th, 2010. This morning we're going to continue with our Seaside tutorial. We're going to build our first components. Seaside is component-based UI assembly for web applications. So what we're going to do is build a couple of components. First, we're going to build our root components. We'll call this blog root UI, just to emphasize that. And we're going to put this under seaside.wa component, and that's where most of these things will live. And we're going to give it two instance variables, list component and menu component. And what this is going to do is kind of emphasize the way we're building the UI. We have a root UI and we're going to have a list of blog posts and a menu of actions you can take, and those will render themselves with their own objects. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now what we need to do is derive those two new classes. So we'll create blog list UI. And we have to change this. It's going to default to something we don't want right here. So component, hit that, and then one more, blog menu UI, and again seaside.wa component, which I apparently can't spell. We'll hit OK, and that's we have our three classes. Now we're going to do most of the work today in root UI. What we're going to do is go to the class side, create a new category called class initialization, and what we're going to do is we're going to register this thing as an application that can be seen from the root menu. And in Seaside 3.0 this is a little different than it was in Seaside 2.8. You might remember register as application. That's been changed a little bit here in Seaside 3.0 to WA admin register as application at this name. What we're going to do is execute that comment so that it registers itself. And now we have one more thing to do on here in the instance side in initialize. We need to change this so that we have the list component pointing to blog list UI new and the menu component to blog menu UI new. We'll leave the boilerplate there even though it's not relevant. Now that's mostly done from the working standpoint. It would work at this point, just wouldn't do anything useful. What we want to do though is we want to add some rendering. So we'll add a new category called render, and we'll put in our method, render content on. Now the render content on method is the main method that Seaside uses to render. When you have a component and you want it to render something on the HTML canvas, this is the method that gets invoked. So in UI terms, this is the draw on method. So we have HTML div, we have a class, we have a menu ID. We haven't introduced style sheets into this yet, but this is setting this up to have that capability. So we have the menu component there, and then we want to have a similar thing to put in another div, the list component. So we're putting out two divs, one for the menu, one for the list. We'll accept that code. And now at this point there's two things to do before we can see this. It turns out the Seaside server in 3.0 isn't running by default in VisualWorks. If you go to the Seaside menu, you'll see Start Server, and that'll start it. And now if you want to see our thing, we go to Open Browser on Server, and you should see in your default browser, mine is Chrome, comes up and you see this item here, Blog View, since I've registered the application. And it comes up and says Simple Blog Server, which is really all we expect because we have the heading, and this code down here that I put in doesn't do anything yet because those components, they just go with the default render content on, which does nothing. If we go up the hierarchy here and look at the default render content on, we would find nothing in here. So if I scroll down to the R's, for instance, I believe we'll find an empty one either here or maybe in the superclass. I can't recall exactly where it is, but in one of these, there it is, render content on. You see, doesn't do anything except ask each child, go ahead and render yourself. And since there's nothing to do there, they don't render anything except blank space. So that's how we end up with this. So that's about it for today. Next time we'll come in and we'll start having our components start rendering so you can see how that assembly works. Till then, have fun with Smalltalk.